The year was 1901. In the quiet, coastal town of Wiscasset, Maine, where the salty air carried the whispers of forgotten maritime legends, a peculiar artifact surfaced. It was a tintype photograph, a common enough memento of the era, but this one was different, unnervingly so. It depicted a young girl, no older than 10, standing serenely before the weathered facade of the old Perkins house. Her dress was simple, a faded calico print, and her hands were clasped gently before her, as if in quiet contemplation. Her expression was serene, almost ethereal, and her eyes, dark and deep, held a wisdom that seemed to defy her tender age, gazing out from the aged emulsion with an unnerving calm. The tintype was found tucked away in a dusty old ledger, discovered during the arduous and meticulous inventory of the recently deceased Ebenezer Thorne's estate. Thorne, a quiet, solitary clockmaker, had lived a life marked by reclusion, his existence barely a ripple in the calm waters of Wiscasset life. His passing had stirred little more than a polite exchange of condolences amongst the townsfolk, his habits so predictable, his presence so unassuming. Yet, this single photograph, once brought into the harsh light of day, ignited a slow, burning ember of unease, a disquiet that spread like a phantom chill amongst the town's longtime residents. The Perkins house itself, a sturdy Federalist-style structure with a history as long and winding as the Sheepscot River it overlooked, stood sentinel over generations of Wiscasset families. Its venerable timbers had witnessed countless seasons, endured fierce storms, and silently observed untold human dramas unfold within its walls and on its grounds. But no one, not a single soul in the town's collective, multi-generational memory, could place the girl in the photograph. Her face was utterly unknown, a ghost in a familiar setting, creating a disturbing dissonance that resonated deeply within the close-knit community. The first whispers began, as they often do in small towns, in the general store, amongst the sacks of flour and barrels of salted fish. Old Widow Hemlock, her memory sharper than any knife in the butcher's block, her eyes keen even in her advanced years, swore she'd never seen the child. "Every child born in Wiscasset, every single one, I know 'em," she'd cackled, her voice raspy with the accumulation of years and certainty, her gnarled finger pointing accusingly at the tintype. "And that one, she ain't from here, never was." Her pronouncement, delivered with the weighty authority of age and unblemished recall, sent a tangible shiver through the small gathering of townspeople. The tintype circulated, passed from calloused hand to trembling hand, its enigmatic subject scrutinizing each new viewer with her hauntingly serene gaze. Efforts were made to identify her, exhaustive inquiries that stretched across families and generations. Comparisons were drawn to faded family portraits, to brittle old-school registers, to the faint, unreliable memories of long-departed relatives, to the very edges of collective consciousness. But each inquiry, each hopeful comparison, met the same perplexing and disheartening silence. The girl in the photograph, by all verifiable accounts and historical records, simply did not exist within the known, recorded fabric of Wiscasset's history. It was as if she had materialized from thin air, a photographic impossibility. Ebenezer Thorne's past, once deemed unremarkable, a bland tapestry woven with threads of solitude and clockwork precision, now came under intense scrutiny. He had lived in the Perkins house for over 40 years, a confirmed bachelor, a solitary figure dedicated with an almost monkish devotion to the intricate mechanisms of time. Yet, the house itself, a place of silent witness to his hermetic life, seemed to hold its own deep-seated secrets, secrets that had been stirred awake, like dormant spirits, by the unexpected and unsettling appearance of the tintype. The very air within its rooms now felt charged with unspoken narratives. Thorne had acquired the Perkins house in 1860, a purchase that had been shrouded in the same quiet mystery that defined his entire life. Local lore, passed down through generations, held that the previous occupants, a family named the Cranbrooks, had left abruptly, abandoning the grand property with unusual and perplexing haste. No clear, satisfactory reason was ever publicly given for their sudden and complete departure. Only vague, unsettling rumors of a pervasive illness, a profound misfortune, or perhaps something more chilling that drove them from their ancestral home. The air around their leaving was thick with unanswered questions. As the estate was meticulously catalogued, every dusty volume and forgotten trinket accounted for as go. A particular room on the second floor drew immediate and unsettling attention. It was a small chamber, surprisingly well preserved, almost as if it had been sealed away from the relentless passage of time itself, untouched by the decades that had accumulated elsewhere. Unlike the rest of the house, in which bore the subtle, pervasive scent of dust, disuse, and age, this room held a faint, lingering aroma of lavender and something else, something undefinable, like forgotten warmth or the ghost of a child's laughter, a scent that hinted at a life abruptly halted. In this room, an empty cradle sat tucked away in a corner, its aged wood polished smooth, almost unnaturally so, as if by countless gentle, loving touches over a prolonged period. A child's rocking horse, its once vibrant paint chipped and faded, but its posture still expectant, as if awaiting a rider, stood sentinel beside a window that looked out onto the now wildly overgrown garden. There were no toys, no discarded clothes, no personal effects, no physical remnants of a child's occupancy. Only the stark, undeniable presence of a space once prepared with tender care for a child, now utterly devoid of one, a poignant tableau of absence. The discovery of the empty nursery deepened the already profound enigma surrounding Thorne and the perplexing photograph. Had Thorne, the reclusive clockmaker, ever harbored the hope, the silent yearning, of a family? Or did the room and its quiet, poignant emptiness belong to a story that tragically predated his occupancy, a narrative intricately woven into the very beams and floorboards of the Perkins house itself, a forgotten tragedy resonating within its ancient walls? The questions hung heavy in the air, unanswered and profoundly unsettling, casting a long shadow over Thorne's seemingly simple existence. The focus of the inquiry naturally shifted to the Cranbrook family, the previous inhabitants of the Perkins house, whose sudden departure had long been a hushed mystery. Official records from that distant era were notoriously sparse, their abrupt leaving having occurred decades prior, before meticulous record-keeping became common practice. However, the vivid, though sometimes faded, memories of the town's oldest residents, those who had lived through that time, offered tantalizing fragments, pieces of a forgotten puzzle that now seemed to align with disturbing precision. They were the last living witnesses to a story barely told. Mrs. Elara Cranbrook, a devout and somewhat frail woman, had been known throughout Wiscasset for her quiet, almost withdrawn demeanor and her profound, almost obsessive love for her only child. This was a love that bordered on an all-consuming devotion, a fierce protectiveness that shielded her daughter from the perceived harshness of the world. That child, a delicate and introspective daughter named Eliza, was born within the very walls of the Perkins house in the year 1850. Her birth a brief moment of joy in what would become a sorrowful tale. Accounts from those who remembered Eliza described her as a delicate, almost ethereal girl, prone to flights of fancy and possessing a deep, almost mystical connection to the natural world. She was said to spend countless hours in the overgrown garden behind the house, conversing with unseen companions, her voice a soft murmur carried on the breeze, and meticulously sketching fantastical creatures and whimsical landscapes in her worn, leather-bound notebook, a private world unfurling on its pages. Her imagination was boundless, her spirit seemingly unburdened by the practicalities of life. However, Eliza Cranbrook's story ended abruptly, a sudden, tragic punctuation mark in the family's narrative. Local records, terse and clinical, indicated that she had succumbed to a sudden, virulent illness at the tender age of 10, precisely the age of the girl captured in the bewildering tintype. The official cause of death was listed simply as consumption, a common and often vague diagnosis of the era, a catch-all for various wasting diseases. Yet, the shocking suddenness of her decline and the Cranbrook's subsequent, almost panicked, hurried departure had always been topics of hushed speculation, never fully accepted by the community. Some whispered that Eliza had not died of consumption at all, but of a broken heart, a spirit too fragile for the world's harsh realities. Or perhaps, a broken spirit, shattered by an unspoken sorrow. Others spoke of a peculiar, pervasive melancholy that had settled upon the Cranbrook household in Eliza's final months. A palpable sadness that seemed to seep from the very walls of the Perkins house, chilling all who entered. The details were vague, shrouded in the mists of time and the reluctance of the community to speak ill of the dead, or to delve too deeply into a family's private grief. The tintype, with its image of a healthy, vibrant, and seemingly living girl, starkly contradicted the official narrative of Eliza Cranbrook's sudden and tragic demise. If the girl in the photograph was indeed Eliza, then the astonishing date of 1901 presented an impossible paradox, a defiance of temporal logic that defied all understanding. Eliza Cranbrook had been dead for over 40 years by then, a fact etched into the town's memory. The possibility of mistaken identity was considered and meticulously investigated, but the resemblance once pointed out by those who remembered the young Cranbrook girl was eerily striking, an almost perfect match that sent shivers down the spine. Ebenezer Thorne, the reclusive clockmaker, had arrived in Wiscasset shortly after the Cranbrooks' inexplicable departure, almost as if he were drawn to the void they left behind. He purchased the Perkins house at a surprisingly low price, a detail that further fueled local gossip and led some to speculate about the Cranbrooks' desperate haste to sell, as if fleeing a pestilence or a curse. Thorne, once settled, immediately immersed himself in his craft, his workshop becoming his sanctuary, filled with the rhythmic ticking and intricate whirring of countless mechanisms, a constant soothing testament to the relentless, unstoppable march of time. It was said among those few who knew him, or rather knew of him, that Thorne harbored an unusual, almost profound fascination with time itself, not merely its precise measurement, which was his profession, but its very nature, its ephemeral qualities, its elusive secrets. He amassed a remarkable collection of antique timepieces, some of them impossibly old, rare, and exquisitely complex, each a small universe of gears and springs. He spent countless hours studying their inner workings, their delicate balance, their intricate movements, as if seeking to unlock the very secrets of existence, the true essence of time within their metallic hearts. The discovery of the tintype in his personal ledger, meticulously placed as if it were a crucial, undeniable piece of evidence, suggested a deeper, more personal connection to the mysteries of time than anyone had ever imagined. It indicated a profound, almost obsessive relationship with something beyond mere mechanics. Among Thorne's vast and meticulously organized possessions were numerous leather-bound journals, filled cover to cover with his precise, almost calligraphic script. Most entries detailed the intricate mechanics of clock repair, or theoretical musings on the abstract nature of temporal mechanics, dense with mathematical equations and philosophical ponderings. However, nestled amongst these technical annotations, often appearing unexpectedly between complex diagrams and formulae, a recurring and deeply personal theme began to emerge. Fragmented, almost poetic verses, often describing a solitary figure, a young girl, within a lush, verdant garden. These were not mere casual observations. They were imbued with a profound longing, a sense of quiet yearning that seemed to bleed from the very ink on the page, hinting at a deep emotional connection to the subject. One particular passage, carefully dated 1885, spoke with a poignant resonance of a fleeting glimpse of sunlight in the shadowed leaves, a whisper of laughter that defied the years. Another, penned in 1892, mused with a profound melancholic tone on the echoes of what once was, made solid by the lens of memory, or perhaps something far more, something that transcends the mere passage of moments. These cryptic entries, so unlike his usual precise notes, alongside the bewildering tintype, painted a complex and haunting portrait of Thorne, not just as a brilliant clockmaker, but as a man haunted by a presence, or perhaps by a profound and unfulfilled desire. His fascination extended beyond the abstract and the written word. Thorne had, in his later years, commissioned several local artists to paint landscapes of the Perkins house garden. Each painting, regardless of the artist's individual style or interpretation, shared a common, subtle, yet undeniably present element. A faint, almost imperceptible blur in the background, a mere hint of a small, youthful figure, always, unsettlingly, in the exact same location where the girl in the tintype stood. It was as if Thorne, through these artistic endeavors, was desperately trying to coax something unseen, something elusive, into tangible, visible existence to give form to a spectral vision. The date on the tintype, 1901, remained the most profoundly perplexing element of the entire mystery, a stubborn anomaly that defied all logical explanation. If the photograph unequivocally depicted Eliza Cranbrook, who had tragically died in 1860, how could it possibly have been taken 41 years after her demise? The scientific limitations of the era, the nascent state of photography, definitively ruled out any sophisticated photographic manipulation or trickery. The image was a direct impression, a tangible snapshot of a moment in time, seemingly unaltered and authentic, which only deepened the paradox. The most pragmatic and readily available explanation, that the tintype simply depicted another child, a stranger who coincidentally bore an uncanny resemblance to Eliza, failed utterly to satisfy the growing unease that permeated Wiscasset. The persistent, unwavering claims of no one recognizing the girl in a town as small, as close-knit, and as intimately familiar with its inhabitants as Wiscasset felt too significant, too profound, to be simply ignored or dismissed as coincidence. The communal consensus among the elderly, those who had seen generations pass, was that this girl, this exact child, was not of their known world, not of their collective memory. Some began to theorize about a misdated artifact, perhaps a relic from an earlier time, a forgotten object that had only been discovered by Thorne in 1901, leading to the erroneous dating. But the remarkably preserved condition of the tintype, its crispness, its clarity, and the vibrancy of its tones, spoke unequivocally of a relatively recent production, not an ancient, faded relic. Furthermore, Thorne's meticulous nature, so evident in his vast collection of precisely dated clocks and meticulously organized ledgers, made a simple dating error on his part highly improbable, if not entirely impossible. He was a man obsessed with precision. The possibility of a forgotten family, a transient visitor who briefly resided in Wiscasset, perhaps unknown to the longtime residents, was also explored with diligent effort. Yet the deep, intimate connection of the girl to the Perkins house, a private residence not known for accommodating transient guests or boarders, made this scenario highly unlikely, almost fanciful. The girl's serene confidence in the image, her comfortable stance, her evident familiarity with her surroundings, suggested a profound sense of belonging, a rootedness that belied a fleeting visit, indicating a deeper, more enduring presence. As the weeks inexorably turned into months, and the initial shock began to settle into a deep-seated bewilderment, the tintype became a local legend, a silent sentinel of an unresolved question, a visual enigma that defied all attempts at rational explanation. It spoke of a distortion in the very fabric of time, a tear in the otherwise linear and predictable progression of Wiscasset's history. The rational explanations, one by one, withered and crumbled in the face of the photograph's unsettling persistence, its unwavering contradiction of known facts, leaving behind a chilling void of understanding, a profound sense of the uncanny. The old Perkins house garden, once a vibrant, meticulously cultivated sanctuary, a testament to the Cranbrooks' quiet love for beauty, had become a wildly overgrown and tangled wilderness in the decades following their departure. It was a place where unchecked growth reigned supreme, where brambles choked the remains of old rose bushes, and tall weeds obscured what were once winding, manicured paths. Yet, amidst this unruly abundance, the faint ghost-like outline of old flower beds and the graceful curves of forgotten paths could still be discerned, barely visible beneath the verdant chaos, hinting at its past glory. It was a place where light and shadow played an eternal, shifting game, where dappled sunlight filtered through ancient oak leaves, creating an ever-changing mosaic on the forest floor. and the very air within this overgrown expanse seemed to hum with an almost imperceptible, yet palpable, energy, a subtle resonance that whispered of things unseen and unheard. Children of Wiscasset had long avoided the garden, their innocent imaginations stirred by generations of whispers and hushed tales of strange, flickering lights and ethereal, disembodied voices carried on the wind, like fragments of forgotten conversations. They spoke of a persistent feeling of being watched, even when no one was visibly present, a chilling sensation of unseen eyes following their movements. And they spoke of an unsettling sense of profound loneliness, a pervasive sadness that seemed to seep from the very earth beneath the ancient oak tree that stood sentinel at the garden's heart. The garden, it seemed, held its own deep-seated memories, its own potent echoes of a past that stubbornly refused to fade, clinging to the very soil and the gnarled roots of its oldest inhabitants. One particularly eerie and widely circulated account came from a young boy, known for his earnest honesty, who claimed to have seen a faint, shimmering outline of a girl playing near the ancient, moss-covered well in the heart of the garden. He described her movements as fluid, almost dreamlike, as if she were made of mist and moonlight, and her laughter, though faint and almost inaudible, as impossibly clear and melodic, a sound that resonated deep within his young soul. His parents, pragmatic and dismissive of childish imagination, attributed it to the play of light and shadow, the tricks of an overactive mind. But the boy's conviction was unshaken, his eyes wide with a truth they couldn't comprehend. Thorne himself, in the meticulous entries of his later journals, had made repeated, almost obsessive references to the garden, describing it with a profound reverence as a veil between realms, a thin membrane separating the tangible world from something else, something beyond human comprehension. He wrote of spending long evenings there, not merely observing the flora and fauna, but listening, as if waiting for a particular frequency, a specific resonance, a subtle vibration to manifest itself from the very air, a signal from another dimension. His notes detailed intricate geometric patterns, precisely drawn into the damp soil, patterns that uncannily resembled complex clockwork gears, suggesting an attempt to manipulate or understand temporal mechanics within that very space. It was as if the garden, through Thorne's quiet, persistent observation and his esoteric experiments, had become a living canvas for his temporal obsessions, a specific place where the rigid boundaries between past and present blurred, where time itself became fluid and permeable. The girl in the tintype A, standing confidently and serenely within this very garden, seemed to be an intrinsic part of its enduring mystery, a figure inextricably linked to the place itself, existing beyond the conventional limitations of linear time, a haunting echo of a moment that refused to pass. As the formal investigation into the Thorne estate slowly concluded, its meticulous accounting complete, the tintype remained an utterly unsolved enigma. The local authorities, practical and grounded firmly in the tangible realities of their world, eventually dismissed it as an inexplicable anomaly, perhaps a misidentified photograph, or a forgotten relative whose connection had simply been tragically lost to the relentless currents of time. They had no framework for the inexplicable, no categories for the truly unknown. But for the people of Wiscasset, the tintype had become more than just a perplexing photograph. It was a potent symbol of an unseen, subtle thread woven through the very fabric of their history, a narrative thread that continued to unravel. The story of the girl who never existed in any verifiable record, yet whose clear, undeniable image graced a photograph undeniably taken in their own town, became a cautionary tale, a whispered warning against the inexplicable forces that lurked just beneath the surface of everyday life. It spoke to the enduring, almost mystical power of memory, both individual and collective, and the profoundly unsettling notion that some truths transcend the tangible, existing in the liminal, shadowy spaces between what is known and what can never be fully understood, between reality and illusion. Old Mrs. Ilara Cranbrook, long since departed from the mortal coil, had left behind a small, exquisitely hand-stitched sampler, discovered tucked inside an old cedar-lined chest in her family home, a forgotten memento of a grieving heart. It depicted a solitary figure, Unmistakably a young girl, standing in a lush garden, directly beneath the sheltering branches of an ancient oak tree. The figure's face on the sampler was strikingly unfinished, a stark blank space where features should have been, as if the artist's hand had faltered or lacked the courage to complete it. However, the posture of the figure, the delicate hand reaching out to an unseen butterfly, the very essence of its graceful form, uncannily mirrored the serene grace and ethereal presence of the girl in the tintype, an unsettling resonance that defied coincidence. This sampler, a private or intimate creation of a grieving mother's profound sorrow, suggested a deeper, more complex narrative than the simple records could convey, a personal truth that perhaps transcended the clinical diagnosis of consumption and hinted at something far more profound and enduring. Was it simply a symbolic representation of Eliza, forever young and vibrant in her mother's heartbroken memory, a child preserved in the realm of art and grief? Or was it something more, a recognition of a persistent presence that lingered, a spirit tragically tied to the very earth of the Perkins house garden, a silent witness to its enduring sorrow? The Cranbrook family, in their hurried, almost desperate departure, had taken nothing but their most essential belongings, as if fleeing with only what they could carry. Yet, they inexplicably left behind the Perkins house, the empty nursery, and the unspoken, palpable weight of a profound grief that seemed to resonate through the decades, a haunting echo of their loss. The tintype, unearthed from Thorne's silent, enigmatic world, seemed to be the visual echo of that unexpressed sorrow, a tangible manifestation of a truth too profound, too unsettling, for mere words to convey. Today, the Perkins house still stands, much as it did in that perplexing year of 1901, though time has etched deeper lines into its weathered facade, a testament to the relentless passage of seasons. The garden, once so carefully tended, remains stubbornly overgrown, a wild tangle of forgotten blooms and persistent weeds, a verdant wilderness that guards its secrets fiercely. It still whispers its ancient tales to the salt-laden breeze, a faint, rustling murmur that only the most attuned ears might discern, a living echo of past lives and unspoken tragedies. The mystery of the girl in the photograph has to this very day never been definitively solved. No new records have surfaced. No definitive, rational explanation has ever been found that satisfies the unsettling facts. She remains an enigma, a phantom presence captured in a fleeting moment, a ghost of a child who existed, yet in all verifiable records, did not. The question persists, echoing through the silent halls of the Perkins house and the hushed corners of Wiscasset. Who was she, truly? And how, by any logical means, could her image appear decades after her supposed demise, defying the very laws of time itself? Some among the townspeople, those with a leaning towards the mystical, believe she is the spectral echo of Eliza Cranbrook, a child whose spirit, too delicate and deeply connected to her home, remained tragically bound to the familiar grounds she loved, a manifestation of a mother's enduring love and profound, unanswered grief. Perhaps, some whisper, her image was even inadvertently drawn forth by Thorne's fervent, esoteric studies of time, his attempts to bend or understand its nature. Others, more inclined to the atmospheric, whisper that the Perkins house itself holds a peculiar temporal quality, a thin veil where the past and present occasionally intertwine, allowing fleeting, unsettling glimpses of what once was to bleed inexplicably into the now. The tintype, a meticulously preserved replica of the original now safely housed in a private, undisclosed collection, occasionally makes its way into local historical exhibits, always drawing the same curious, unsettled gazes from both locals and visitors alike. It serves as a constant, tangible reminder of the unexplained, a chilling testament to the fact that some histories are not merely written in dusty ledgers or carved in cold stone, but linger in the quiet, forgotten corners of the world, in the unsettling silence of old houses, in the faded photographs, and in the hushed, almost fearful whispers of an old town that has seen more than it can comprehend. The girl's serene gaze, captured forever in the delicate silver emulsion, continues to haunt, to question, and to invite us, even now, to ponder the true, elusive nature of time, the profound and often deceptive power of memory, and the enduring, unsettling presence of the unseen that lies just beyond our grasp. And as the sun sets over Wiscasset, casting long, ethereal shadows across the stoic facade of the old Perkins house, one can almost hear the faint, melodic whisper of laughter from the overgrown garden, a sound carried on the crisp evening wind, a timeless echo of a girl who, in Maine, never existed, yet undeniably, impossibly, was. Her story, a quiet, profound, and beautifully haunting mystery, continues to unfold in the silent, liminal spaces between the known and the unknowable, a chilling testament to the enduring, inexplicable power of the past.
If you like this type of stories, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.